Should you do your logic proofs using natural deduction or using proof trees? In this video, I'm going to give you a quick comparison of both cases. Hello everyone, welcome to The Attic. My name's Mark Jago. I'm a philosophy professor in the UK. I've been doing a lot of videos on this channel of proving things in logic using natural deduction and proving things in logic using the proof trees technique. But which one's better? Which one should you use? Well, there's no real answer to that. They're both good or bad depending on the particular case. So in this video, I'm going to take some example proofs done in both natural deduction and tree proof style side by side so that we can compare them and see what they look like side by side. So if that sounds good to you, you can do me a favour, give this video a thumbs up, and why not subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to get notifications. Okay, so we're going to look at the two worked examples from the previous video. If you haven't seen that one, there should be a link to it kind of around here if I've done it properly. So I'm not going to go through all the details of those. Let's just have a look at the first example. Okay, so first up, we're going to work through this example. So first line, we're going to write down the premise, and then it's the negated conclusion. Here we've got a conjunction. The rule for that gives me not P and not Q. Here we've got a double negation, so the rule for that just eliminates the double negation, so we get P or Q. And then I've got this disjunction here, so that is a branching rule. We branch left and right, P on the left, Q on the right. And then what have we got? Well, on the left we've got P and not P, so that branch closes. And on the right I've got Q and not Q, so that one closes. So that is a closed tree. That is a proof from here to here. So the premise does prove the conclusion. That was a super simple example. So before we move on to another example, I thought it might be useful to compare this proof to the corresponding one using natural deduction. So same premise, same conclusion, but how would we get there using the natural deduction style of proof? So what we would do there is we'd start off with our premise, and we've got to get down to this conclusion, not P or Q. Turns out that the simplest way to do that is by indirect proof. So we're going to assume the negation of our conclusion. Okay, and then we basically reason like we did in the tree. So we've got a conjunction up here, so we can use conjunction elimination and we get not P and not Q. And then here we've got double negation, which gives us P or Q. Okay, so to get us from P or Q, we need to use disjunction elimination. So we have to assume P, we have to assume Q, and see where we get to. So it's going to have this kind of structure. And then notice that we've got P here and not P. So that's a contradiction. And here we've got Q and not Q. So that's a contradiction. And because we've got a contradiction on both assumptions, we can infer that contradiction full stop. So we assumed not P or Q, we got a contradiction, so we can infer from indirect proof not P or Q. Okay, so that's one way we can do it using natural deduction. So it's just kind of worth comparing this to the tree proof. Up in the natural deduction one, we have our premise and the negation of our conclusion, and that's what we've got up here. We've got conjunction elimination, and we've also got that in the tree proof. We've got double negation elimination, and we've also got that in the tree proof. Then in the natural deduction one, we kind of do a branching thing by first assuming the P bit and then assuming the Q bit, getting the same conclusion and inferring this. We kind of do the same thing in the tree proof, but rather than first assuming the one thing and then assuming the other and then seeing what we get up to and then inferring something from it, we basically take the disjunction and we split our proof into two. So we branch left and we branch right. The falsums we get in the natural deduction correspond to closing the branch here. And closing the branch kind of corresponds to getting a falsum in each case. In the natural deduction proof, we then concluded, oh, falsum full stop, which is kind of like saying all the branches close, so the whole tree closes, and because the whole tree closes, we could infer our conclusion. In the natural deduction case, that meant we can infer our conclusion. In the tree case, well, a closed tree means that the conclusion, the bit before the extra negation, is proved. Okay, so this kind of proof was very, very similar whether we do it natural deduction or tree proof, but it's a little bit neater, I think a little bit aesthetically nicer doing it in the tree proof way. But they're very, very similar. Okay, let's look at our second example. We're going to try to prove this single sentence. The nice thing about proving this one is there's only two real rules that we need to think about. The rule for if then, the arrow, and the negated rule for the arrow. So we're going to begin by negating the whole thing. Make sure we put these brackets around the whole thing so it's the whole sentence that gets negated, not just the first part of it. Okay, then we need to see what's our main connectives. Which rule do we apply? Well, it's negation, and the next main connective is if then. So we want the rule for not arrow. So we get P arrow Q arrow R. And we get not, put the whole thing in brackets, if P then Q, then if P then R. Okay, so again, we've got the not arrow rule. So we want to have this and not this. So we're going to have P arrow Q and not P arrow R. So let's stick with the non-branching rules first. So we're going to add P, not R. Okay, so let's just start with this one at the top. We're going to branch and we're going to get not P on the left and we're going to get Q arrow R on the right. Nice thing about this is here we've got not P, here we've got P, so this one closes. Okay, so we can tick that one off, and we've still got two sentences that we need to work with. Again, it doesn't really matter which one we pick, so let's just again go with the one at the top. So we get not P on the left and we get Q on the right. Okay, so again, here we've got not P, there we've got P, so this one closes. We're going to need a little bit more room here. We'll tick that one off to say we're done. The one we've got remaining is this one here. Same deal, we're going to get not Q on the left and we're going to get R on the right. So here we've got not Q and Q, so that branch closes. And here we've got R, and previously we had not R, so that one closes. Okay, so we've got a closed tree. All the branches close. Okay, just for the fun of it, why don't we compare that tree proof to the natural deduction proof? Okay, so since we're trying to prove a single sentence with no premises, we start off with nothing, we make an assumption, we're trying to prove an if-then, so we're going to assume the if bit and try and get ourselves down at the bottom of the proof to the then bit. So that is if P then Q, then if P then R. And here's a nice thing about natural deduction, we basically just repeat. So now we're trying to get to this if-then, so we do another conditional proof thing. This time we're going to assume the if bit and try and get ourselves down to the new then bit. So we assume if P then Q, and we're trying to get down to if P then R. Okay, and we're aiming for another if then. So again, we're going to do another embedded conditional proof, this time assuming P, trying to get down to R. Once we've got that structure in place, it's kind of super easy because we've got P and then some conditionals with P in it. Doesn't matter which one we choose. So let's go here and here. So modus ponens on that gives us if Q then R. Modus ponens on this and this gives us Q. And then modus ponens on this and this gives us R, which is what we were aiming for. So that completes the proof. So in this case, I think this proof is a bit nicer as a natural deduction proof as opposed to the tree proof, but again, they're very similar. So we start off here with some assumptions. Well, we kind of get that line here. And rather than getting a conclusion here in the tree one, we've got the negated kind of interim conclusion there. And then as we work through these bits here, we kind of get these lines later on in our tree proof. So not as assumptions, but we work our way through them by breaking down these negated bits, okay? In a tree proof, negated conditionals are always your friend because they give you definite bits of information. If you've got not, if A then B, then you definitely add A and not B to your proof. That's always going to help you out because it's not a branching rule. You haven't got tons more branches to work with. So after cashing out all that information from the negated conditional at the start here, we start branching in our tree proof, but we always close one of these sides. So it's quite a linear proof. There's not really many options for us there. It's very similar to what we got going on here. Even though I think it is not quite as aesthetically nice in the tree case, there is one advantage to it in that, in the natural deduction case, we had to do all these embedded subproofs. They can get a bit complicated for you as the prover. Sometimes it's not obvious which things you assume or whatever. Reasoning about these things, like doing the meta logic of it, gets pretty complicated. We don't have any of that in this tree proof. That's really going to help us out when we get onto the meta logic, the completeness proof for tree proofs. Okay, so there we have a comparison of proof trees against natural deduction. Now, it just so happened that in these two examples, there wasn't so much difference between the natural deduction and the proof trees case, okay? So even though they look really different on the face of it, often they will come out looking quite similar. But not always. Sometimes the natural deduction proof will be totally different from the proof trees one, okay? Sometimes the natural deduction one will be shorter, more aesthetically pleasing, more intuitive or whatever. Sometimes that stuff would go with the proof trees one. So which one's better? Well, it just depends on the case. I like teaching proof trees to my third year students because proof trees are much, much better to reason about than natural deduction is. So if we want to do some reasoning about our proofs and show that it works the way it should, that is, if there's an entailment in our logic, then we can prove it. That's the completeness proof. Proof trees are much easier to work with. But on the other hand, there's something very natural about natural deduction. In particular, I think it's a great idea to learn the basic natural deduction rules because they're great at showing you how to reason in everyday life, right? If you're writing a philosophy essay and you're trying to establish some conclusion and it's an if-then, how are you going to do it? Well, you assume the if bit. Let's say for the sake of argument that if this, can we get the then bit, the consequent? So they're both good. Natural deduction is good for some things. Proof trees are good for other things. Here's my suggestion, learn them both. Okay, I hope you have found this useful and interesting. If you have, why not give this video a big old thumbs up? If you've got any questions, leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching this far. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you back here soon.